Hello, Sunnysiders. We are now back to the story, picking up with Remesio holding on to that obsidian arrowhead around his neck, thinking back to when everything began to go wrong 13 years earlier. So can you guess how old he was at that point? He's not very old now as a kind of a young man that's trying to steal the Jade Jaguar or break that old man out of prison. But now we're going back. This is called a flashback, so we're going sort of back and forth in time as we fill in what's been going on with all our characters. So here we go, 13 years back, when it all began to go wrong. And if you take a look at the picture right at the beginning, that's a picture of a giant strangler fig tree that grows in the rainforest. They grow huge, and what happens is all those vines around the tree basically strangle it. So vines grow up off the rainforest floor, wrap around a tree all the way to the top as it fights for sunlight. And eventually they strangle the trees, but it makes for pretty interesting climbing because if you have all these nooks and crannies as you grow way, way up into these trees reaching for sunlight. So let's pick up the story. 13 years earlier, the dam, Venezuela, Minas Nuevas, which means new mines. And now it's 1954 as we go back, near the Amazon River basin, when it all began to go wrong. Giant strangler fig trees fought for sunlight in the crowded rainforest. 120 feet up, and one of them, perched like watchful raptors, were Remesio Treviso and his twin brother, Rome. The view of the river valley from their treetop location was magnificent. Remesio marveled at the Rio de Oro, or river of gold, as it spilled out into a beautiful waterfall, and he admired the half-mile-wide reservoir above the falls created by a dam that had been built across the gorge hundreds of years earlier. The reservoir was much higher than normal, in fact higher than it had ever been due to the unusually heavy rains that had fallen continuously for the last 7 weeks. Today was a much welcomed sunny day. The boys' village, Minas Nuevas, and even the red tin roof of their parents' laboratory could be seen from this bird's-eye view. The village of Minas Nuevas was 2 miles farther downstream, located where the Rio de Oro flowed into the larger Caroni River. Roan was thrilled to be so high off the ground, but his knees knocked, and he had difficulty breathing when he looked down. Adjusting his glasses, he looked again. This was exciting. His excitement, however, was offset by his fear of doing something so risky. He couldn't believe their bad luck. Neither egg in the eagle's nest had hatched. "Don't worry, Remesio," he had said. "They just wait for the mother eagle to show up." For over 2 hours, the twins had been waiting for the harpy eagle to return to its nest so they could steal its tail feathers. Roan glanced over at his brother Remesio, who crouched as calm and as motionless as a spotted jaguar lying in wait for its prey. Nothing ever seemed to bother Remesio, but Roan was running out of patience. They had skipped school to be here. Glancing towards the village and the red tin roof of their parents' laboratory, Roan grimaced and could only hope his mom and dad wouldn't find out. Remesio, unconcerned, had said it would be their only chance to become part of the Shantaya, and he knew Remesio was right. The reason they were here looking for tail feathers 120 feet up in a strangler fig tree was because today was their 12th birthday. According to Shantaya tradition, the 12th birthday was the bridge between youth and adulthood, and was therefore celebrated by a rite of passage. This rite of passage tested both the physical and mental ability of the tribe members. After successfully undergoing this trial, the 12-year-old would carry the rights and privileges of any other adult in the tribe. It was, without a doubt, the most important day in the life of a Shantayan. And it was all the more extraordinary because Roan and Remesio had been born outside of the tribe. While Roan's first thought had been to skip the test altogether, they would be leaving the remote village of Minas Nuevas in a week. Remesio would have none of it. Today was the day. So, as Roan sat high in the strangler fig tree, excited and afraid of its height, and even more afraid of what would happen if the parents found out, He scolded himself for once again letting his brother get him to do something so against his nature. He preferred to be on the ground, examining the different plants, insects, and rocks that he found so interesting. In that regard, he was much like his parents. But deep inside, he was a little thankful for his brother's adventuresome spirit. He just hoped that the harpy eagle would show up soon. Remesio, on the other hand, was enjoying himself immensely. Unlike Roan, he was never bothered by second thoughts about anything. He very much lived for the moment. The view of the crystal blue reservoir behind the old dam, with the waterfall pouring over it, was like a matchstick igniting his vivid imagination. He wondered what it would be like to fly from place to place like the harpy eagle they were waiting for. The two boys remained motionless, each lost in their own thoughts, until a loud explosion from downriver brought them to attention. It was enough to shake the tree they were in, and the boys watched with fascination as the few giant leaves floated aimlessly to the ground, far, far below. And now we're going to step back just a couple hours, 2 hours earlier, to see what caused that explosion. So, the mine, 2 hours earlier, and what caused the explosion. "Jose, take a look at that," ordered Ramon Hernandez. He set a case of dynamite down and pointed to the sky. "Those big birds are beautiful, but I don't like to see them. Some of the Indians say they bring bad luck." Jose set his case of dynamite down near the shed at one of the mine entrances and wiped his brow. "Me neither," was all he said. Miners can be superstitious people. Anything at any time could be considered a bad omen. They watched the harpy eagle soar gracefully over the village and ride the soft spring breeze into the distance towards the reservoir upstream. It seemed to be enjoying the dry, sunny weather as much as everyone. "Come on, Ramon, we have a lot to do today," coaxed Jose. "These are the last cases for Bacho, and then we've got the prep shaft number 84 for blasting. And don't forget, tonight we've got Bocho's farewell party." He smiled and crossed himself. "Let's hope it's not like the last party," said Ramon, also making the sign of the cross. "Can you believe that blind fool is finally going back to Ciudad Guyana, or Guyana City? He's wanted to leave ever since he got here." The two miners laughed and brought the last 2 cases of dynamite to Bocho's storage shed. Unlucky Bocho. So who is this Bocho guy? Bocho Cepeda was a chain-smoking project foreman for mining operations in Minas Nuevas. He was indeed a fool, and although not a blind one, he had a hard time seeing. At the moment, he was using a magnifying glass to read his horoscope. He had lost his reading glasses and most of his money in a card game 2 weeks earlier. After 1 year in Minas Nuevas, it could be said that he still knew nothing about the mining industry. Production had gone down dramatically. Bocho's reports to headquarters could not be understood, and his bookkeeping abilities were suspect. In just 1 year, Bocho had managed to demonstrate to everyone his lack of ability. Furthermore, bad luck seemed to follow him wherever he went. Many in the front office in Ciudad Guyana believed that he was responsible for turning their once profitable business into an operation on the verge of bankruptcy, and that he probably had brought on all 7 weeks of the hard rain. If Bocho had worked for anybody else, he would have been fired long ago. But Bocho worked for his uncle, and his uncle adored his sister, who just happened to be Bocho's mother. Bocho's mother had asked her rich brother to help her get Bocho out of the house, because in 25 years he had never had a job. Until his eyes went bad, he loved to play football and go out with his friends and have fun. But after his eyes lost focus, so did he. He stopped playing games and just went out with his friends and had fun. So his mother tried everything to get him to work. She told him how smart he was. She set up job interviews for him. She nagged him. But he never even pretended to look for a job. Finally, out of frustration, she appealed to her brother, Jorge, who gave Bocho a job far from home. They thought that if Bocho was forced to work in a place far away, he might learn some responsibility. He had failed that test in Minas Nuevas. He was lazy, pure and simple. Since Bocho's arrival a year earlier, gold production had dropped 75%. That affected the bonuses miners would get at the end of the year. The miners thought Bocho was bad luck too. Bocho's uncle had no choice but to find him a job somewhere else. Uncle Jorge wasn't going to let his mining company go broke regardless of how much he cared for his sister. So he was bringing bad luck Bocho back to Ciudad Guyana where he could keep an eye on him. Bocho was the only person in Minas Nuevas who thought he was being promoted, and that was the reason he was throwing a party. Bocho looked up from the horoscope in his week-old newspaper as Ramon and Jose carefully placed the last of the many dynamite cases into the shed. Cigarette smoke swirled around Bocho's head. He half-heartedly tried to brush the smoke away and then placed the cigarette on the edge of the desk. The lazy foreman put his horoscope down and rummaged through the other papers on his desk to find the inventory sheet. Self-consciously, he held his magnifying glass to it so he could make out the print. He needed it for just about anything he read since the card game 2 weeks ago. He promised himself that he would never again gamble away his reading glasses. "Hey, Bocho, what do the stars say? Will you get lucky tonight?" asked Ramon, winking at Jose. "Maybe there'll be a woman who doesn't see so good, and you can get her to dance with you. Just don't let her use your magnifying glass. She might get scared." The two workers elbowed each other in the ribs, laughing just a little too much. Bocho smiled tightly and searched for the proper column on the inventory sheet. He hated his job and all the idiots with which he had to work. Pointing his magnifying glass at the two workers, he said, "It just so happens that the stars say I will be the envy of all my friends. I'll bet you two would like to go where I'm going, back to civilization." Finding a cigarette on the desk, he took a long, proud puff and continued, aiming the cigarette at the two comedians. "Now that the rain is over, people will be ready for a good time. They will remember Bocho's fiesta." He thought for a moment and then added, pounding his chest, "They will speak with respect and envy when Bocho's name is mentioned." Ashes fell on the floor. Ramon and Jose looked at each other. The poor man was delusional. To everyone else, Bocho was a laughing stock. The heavy rains of the last 7 weeks had ruined the dynamite needed for blasting in the mines around the Rio de Oro because Bocho had neglected to put it on pallets and wrap it tightly with waterproof canvas. That is why Ramon and Jose had to deliver a brand new shipment of dynamite in the first place. The sun was beginning to shine through the window in the wooden storage shed. Bocho adjusted his chair so that the light would better help him read about what the stars were saying to him. He was a Pisces. "Attention to detail will be the key to your success." He smiled as he read the words aloud to the two miners. Bocho took another long drag from the cigarette and thought more about his horoscope. He checked off the last 2 cases on his inventory sheet. Now there was a detail he had just paid attention to. He began to fantasize about his new life and wonder what kind of important job his uncle would give him back in Ciudad Guyana. Minas Nuevas was a polluted, noisy mining and timber town nestled in the remote, almost 400 kilometers from Ciudad Guyana, the nearest civilized city. Bocho couldn't wait to leave. Taking one last puff, he flicked the cigarette into a corner, tossed his newspaper on one of the dynamite crates, and stuffed his inventory sheet in his pants pocket. Everything seemed to be in order. He thought again about his party that night. He hoped that nothing would go wrong. Bocho couldn't help but worry that bad luck, the constant companion he tried not to think about or talk about, would make an appearance. The last time he threw a party, it started to rain, and it didn't stop for 7 weeks. Ramon saw the cigarette smoldering next to the dynamite and shook his head. He couldn't wait for Bocho to leave Minas Nuevas either. "Hey, Bocho, for God's sake, put out your cigarette. Are you trying to blow us up?" Bocho got up and casually flung his magnifying glass on a table near the windowsill, where it landed at a very peculiar angle. Casually walking over to where the cigarette was smoldering, he crushed it out with his foot. Bocho smiled mockingly at Ramon and Jose. "Don't you guys have something to do?" Ramon and Jose walked off, grumbling as Bocho locked the storage shed. Another detail he had just paid attention to, he realized. He looked around at the beautiful day and took a deep breath, filling his lungs with fresh, dry air. His last day in Minas Nuevas. Oh boy, he deserved a nap.